Good morning. Our reading this morning from Micah, the 6th chapter, discusses what God requires of us. It begins with a question, and then he gives us the answer. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? This is the word of the Lord.
Beautiful instrumental solo. Our New Testament reading comes from the book of 1 John, chapter 4. And both of these readings were part of the devotional guide that we had throughout our week in West Virginia. And so we thought we'd use them as our scriptures for today. Before I read, why don't I invite all of the youth that are sitting all in a row back there? I'm so proud of how many of them got up on, we just got back late 2 nights ago, and they're here. And come on up and sit together up in this section over here and come and share when I call on you. And we're just so glad you came. Yeah, just go through. You know how to open that little door there and go on and sit in that side there. It'd be great to have you. Even if you're not, I know some of them are prepared to share and some aren't, but they're just going to come up and sit together anyway and behave themselves as they always do. They were just a great group of kids. I can't tell you enough. Well, the reading from 1 John goes like this. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know. Oops, using my phone here, it went off for a second. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and God's love is perfected in us. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Lord, may the words of our mouths together and the meditation of our hearts together be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, as you listen to that familiar passage from 1 John, what was the most important word, do you think, in that passage? Love? Yeah, how many would vote for love? It's probably in there about a dozen times in that passage. Love one another. Well, I'm going to tell you it's actually a different word that's the most important word in that passage. The most important word in that text is sent. God sent his Son. Because you see, in the gospel and in the whole Christian faith, there's, as one of my seminary professors like to say, a sentness to the gospel. Because there's a verse in the Bible that we often think is sort of the gospel in a nutshell. Does anyone know what it is? It's been used and maybe abused, but a famous John 3:16. Exactly. And it says, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. So this idea that God sent Christ to be one of us, to be among us. God's descended from heaven to be a part of the human experience. That sentness, if you will, an awkward word, but it makes some sense when you think about it. God sent God's Son, Jesus Christ, be with us. And then we are all sent out into the world. So being sent is in the DNA of what it means to be a Christian. At John 3:16, by the way, I was a little worried when I first got there. One of the groups had a bright red t-shirt on that had, in the biggest letters you could imagine, John 3:16. Then underneath it said, true story. Okay, but I thought we hadn't got our t-shirts yet. We thought they were going to be the t-shirts for our week together, and I thought, oh boy, not sure what our kids are going to think of that. I'm not sure what I think of that, walking around with a billboard, because you know how John 3:16 gets used, and I think even abused, taken out of context, and football games and all of that kind of thing. But anyway, this idea of being sent, that God sent God's Son to be among us. And so you sent your high school mission team to share that, of course, really the key word of that text, love, God's love. And so I just want to let our young people share some stories of how they shared God's love with the people of West Virginia. RJ, going first?
I guess I'll go first. My name is RJ, and I'm in the youth group, and I recently went on the mission trip. So one thing that I most enjoyed about the mission trip and was most memorable for me was the work site. Painting the house was so empowering, and I really enjoyed working with our youth group, World Vision, and the family. I chose to do the work site for 3 days instead of 2 because I just wanted to keep working, and I loved it so much. I was so determined to finish what we started each day. One of my favorite things I also did during that week at the house was replacing the gas pipe in the boiler tank. I don't know why, but I never saw myself ever being able to do something like that on the trip. But Dale showed me how, and now their boiler tank no longer leaks. On the 3rd day, while everyone went on their lunch break, I stayed on the roof and kept painting because I did not want to stop working. I felt so accomplished at the end of the week when we looked at the house and saw how much we have done. This made me realize how much I love to help others. Even if it's just a simple coat of paint on a house, it can go a long, long way. Seeing the smile on the family's faces as they looked at their new house was the best part. It made me feel like I contributed to their happiness, and I made a change in the community. The mission trip was definitely a life-changing experience for me, and the change we made in that house will have a lasting impact with both them and us forever. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Henry Blair, and I'm going into my senior year. This was my second mission trip, and one of the most meaningful memories I made was while we were eating our lunch, we would play apples to apples, and for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like an appropriate version for kids of Cards Against Humanity. And so we would be playing with the kids, and the card, like the judge's card, would be intriguing or important. And it was really sad to see that these 7th graders couldn't read those words. And it really made me realize how fortunate we are to grow up in a society where education is valued and how wonderful the place we live in. But also it made me realize how these people who had so much less than us were still so happy, and they were still blessed as well. And that was just a really amazing, impactful experience for me. Another really cool experience was when I would be at Vacation Bible School. And this was just amazing because you would get to see how even just playing games with the kids, like there was this one kid, Colby, who would try to pull his hands away from me before I could give him a high five. And it would be going on for 5 seconds, but you would just see this sparkle in his eye and a huge smile on his dimples, and you would know that he was just having such a good time. And so just meeting people and getting to just become friends and happy with everyone there was really just so amazing. I personally loved going on this mission trip. I had an amazing time, and I know that the people I was with also had an amazing time. I think it was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing it again next year. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Marcus Blair, and while I'm not a member of this church, I am fortunate enough to be cousins to the Blairs, and I was also fortunate enough to be able to go on this mission trip and the mission trip that took place 2 years ago. And a real highlight of this trip for me was when we would do the Vacation Bible School with the kids, and at VBS we would interact with the local children, and we would sing songs and play games with them, among other more fun activities. It was really nice to make a connection with them and try to give them something to look forward to every day. I made a great connection with one of the kids in particular. His name was Terrence. While at VBS, he and I talked about soccer and basketball, our favorite teams, our favorite players, and I really loved how he smiled when we would talk. It made me really happy. But unfortunately, the trip did come to an end, and I can no longer see him, but I was fortunate enough to exchange numbers with him. And yesterday we talked about 5 times, and it took about like 2 hours. And we talked about FIFA and 2K18, which, for those of you who don't know, are video games that we like to play. And I gave him a little bit of insight about which teams would help him beat his little brother, because he was having trouble with that. And we have plans to talk again today. All in all, I had an amazing time, and it was an awesome experience to make a difference in someone's life, no matter how little. And I'm also looking forward to doing it again next year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gabby. Today I'm just going to be sharing a story from the trip, really my moment from the week. My moment overall from the week was actually on our first day. It was a group of us going to Vacation Bible School, which some people have described earlier, but we took a wrong turn, and it actually turned out so perfectly. We were driving away from the work site, and we were told to take a U-turn. So we went up this hill, and we go up the hill, and we get to the top, and we look down, and there's this beautiful complex of these amazing mansion houses. And I'll tell you that we were about 3 to 4 miles away from the house we were working at. So we were 3 to 4 miles away from the poverty in West Virginia, and we drove, and we found this amazing, beautiful, wealthy area. And it was very symbolic to me, because it showed that, there's all this poverty, but in our country, it might be masked by the wealth, and you might not understand that there is poverty, beneath all of this wealth that we might believe is around our country everywhere. And it was really, I always want to remember from this trip that there is the poverty, and we can't forget that there are the people that need help, and it's not always those wealthy, big complexes that we found at the top of that hill. And this trip is definitely something that I'm always going to remember for the rest of my life, because of moments like that are going to impact me right now in my life, but also in the future. I had so many other great memories. I made so many connections with kids at Vacation Bible School, with the kids in the family at the house that we worked at. It's going to be a trip that I remember for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ava, and so the past 4 days have been a very foreign experience. So along with forming a bond with my mission trip peers, I interacted with people of different cultures and different socioeconomic backgrounds, and this was to be expected. And yet, instead of seeing any differences, I only saw endless similarities between us and the family we helped. Before working on construction of the house, we were warned of possible annoyance from the family because of our long hours occupying their home. But their endless hospitality and genuine kindness was evident in the small actions they took to make us feel at home, from talking and laughing to us when we were taking breaks, to simply providing lots of food for us. As the week went on, we started to develop real connections with them, and they extended the compassion towards each other to us. Some of the most important moments of the trip included those where I talked and played with the children, one of which who had always wanted to travel to New York and loved to talk to us about it. These people were some of the kindest I've ever met, and although their situation was perhaps not the most favorable, they made the most of it, a value I think we should all follow in our lives. At the end of the week, another extremely valuable moment became present during a community grill. So mission trip workers and citizens of West Virginia alike came together to play a game of soccer, and this was the moment I suddenly felt the bond between the two communities. Kindergartners, elementary school kids, and high schoolers forgetting their differences and joining together to have fun. This was the moment the mission trip was all about, not feeling superior to a community because they have less privileges than us, but enriching a relationship built on a shared Christianity and love. Overall, I'm incredibly thankful for this experience, and I'm perhaps even more grateful than I thought I ever could be, just because of all of the learning and all the values and everything I just experienced with these people. Thank you.
people, and the fact that 10 or 9 out of 11 that were on that trip were here this Sunday morning. Usually we can't drag them back out the first Sunday back. They're busy off doing something else after they get back. But that says a lot right there. Will Condit is sitting up with his dad at the camera. He was part of the trip as well. So 9 out of 11. And Love Bauer had to leave this week. And who else? See if we can come up with the who's not here? And Emma. And Emma couldn't be here today either. What a great group of kids. Well, as we saw in this text, Paul says, or the Apostle John says to us, no one has seen God, but as we love one another, God is in us, and that's where we see God. Some of these young people aren't even sure if they believe in God, as we talked in our sharing times together, and that's okay. And we affirm that that's okay to be anywhere you are on that journey. We all have that journey of faith and doubt and even back and forth in life, right? But as we saw this group come together, I've never seen a mission team be as tight together as a group as this year's team. And so I, for one, saw God in each of you and in our togetherness this week. And I think we saw God's love in action, not only that we shared with them, but the folks of West Virginia shared back with us. So thank you for sending us to share God's love with the people of West Virginia. And in a moment we will gather around this table to share God's love in the bread and in the cup. And then we all will be sent out into the world to share that love. Amen. You can go back to your seats, guys. Thank you again.